Hey everybody, how are you? I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes to come in. I am glad to be able to be alive on this Wednesday. I mean, for real, a lot going on. And I'm grateful for another day of freedom. I hope you are too. I don't take it for granted. So today, not too long ago, I posted a video and a caption about a sheriff here. Well, he's in Clay County, but I believe it is under the 4th Judicial District here. And his name is Sheriff Daniels. And it bothered me only because, I mean, it should bother me. He's an elected official, elected official who his messaging was, to me, was a dog whistle. And I think it was extremely irresponsible. I think it was unbecoming of a leader. And in many ways, in my opinion, it incites the very thing that people are talking about, which is the abuse and the power in state violence. So we're going to kind of get into that. I'm not sure if you had an opportunity to look at it. You should. It's you know, I don't like to sensationalize things, but it's concerning. If I was a person in the Clay County or just a citizen, I am concerned. And I think that his choice of words, I believe that the intention of the message was to intimidate. I don't think at all it was, I don't think it brought any value to what his job is as a sheriff. And I think that, I believe it's going to come back to haunt him. From what I understand, he is running a re-election for the sheriff's office there. And hey, Andre. So this is going to be interesting. So let's see. We got 4 minutes in. Let's just go ahead and dive in. Y'all ask your questions and let's rap about it, because I think that I had something else planned, and then my good buddy Tam Buck sent this to me, and it gave me chills, not out of fear, but more or less out of just, this is a concern and we need to make sure that we continue the conversation, but also be aware of what state violence looks like in this direction, and the idea that he would stand with his officers as a leader and for 3 minutes basically threaten anybody who decides to do a protest. And you know, he obviously knew that it was a threat because he asked a rhetorical question, was it a threat? And he knows a threat. He knows a threat. And also just some of the things that he got into. So a little bit about this sheriff. He used to be, I think he was like the undersheriff or something, maybe in the jail, not even the undersheriff. He was at the jail at one point. And he ran an election out in Clay County. He didn't even put his picture with it, so nobody could tell what his race was, which I thought was kind of crafty. But nonetheless, he won that race. And sometime after that, in Duval County, Angela Corey lost the re-election for state attorney. And so what she did was she still had time that she needed to serve out in order to continue to get her pension. So he welcomed her into his office. So, you know, his commentary on the video does not surprise me, but it is deeply troubling. So that's that. So I'm going to read to you a few things that he actually said. And if you have not had an opportunity to actually look at the video, I'm not going to read the full thing, but just some things that I thought were, you know, questionable. He told the community in his video, don't fall victim or play victim to this conversation that law enforcement is bad, that law enforcement is the enemy of the citizens that we're sworn to protect and serve. And so I guess right there you can tell he's going to go into a very propaganda type speech, because he's already talking about a narrative that for the most part in a big way. It's not about the bad police and all of that. This is really about accountability and the abuse of power and how these things are set up, and that it is supposed to protect and serve, be public servants. And as we can see on camera and in other video footage, that has been taken way too far to the loss of people's lives. And so, that kind of set the tone for the rest of what he was going to say. He said lawlessness, that's unacceptable in this country. Lawlessness, that's unacceptable in Clay County. He said he knows what happens when lawlessness prevails. Hey, Dana. Brooklyn fam, you got that right. He does know what lawlessness is when it prevails, so much so that he would have his mistress arrested after being with her for 6 years and abuse his power. And so the investigation of that case was in the FDLE for over a year. And the interesting thing about it, when we're talking about lawlessness, is that at this point, that report and investigation has been turned over to no other than Melissa Nelson's office, which is the state attorney's office. So at that point, she gets to decide, based on the information, I suppose, the evidence and the investigation in the report, whether or not he actually did some criminal behavior or committed a crime in his leadership role as the sheriff of Clay County. So I'm willing to bet that he is very familiar with lawlessness, considering that he would do that and have her arrested. He had her detained, and I think he put a restraining order out on her. But nonetheless, we're talking about not so much as the acting of itself, but let's talk about somebody in leadership who would take that step to abuse their power for something he engaged in on his job while in that leadership role. And I think that's just questionable in and of itself. And so to add to the video his commentary about him knowing what lawlessness is, I would agree. He does know what lawlessness is, because he does lawless behavior. And looks like right now gets away with it, and Melissa Nelson will determine that in the state attorney's office if he in fact will get away with that. He says that, so you can threaten all you want. I'm not quite sure, why he felt that people exercising their First Amendment right to protest was a threat. But again, that's a dog whistle on a narrative that he wants to continue. People protesting haven't had any issues in Jacksonville. And even within the first actual protest, there was some issues that really wasn't issues, and therefore they haven't had any issues since. So if people wanted to extend a protest out to Clay County, the same way that they have done in Duval County, it shouldn't be an issue, and actually all over. And if you've been watching how the conversation about how protests are being done and who's actually people who are damaging property and things like that, it has been a lot of people outside of the protesters that have been doing that. But as of lately, that hasn't been the issue. So I find it interesting that this comes on the heel of several weeks of protesting, and also during the time where he's going to seek re-election. Now get this, there's 6 other people who are seeking to take his job. There's 6 other people looking to also be run against him for the sheriff position in Duval. So that's interesting. He also said, yes, we'll protect your constitutional rights as long as you remain under the umbrellas of peaceful protest or peaceful march. Okay. He also said, but the second you step out from under protection of the Constitution, we'll be waiting on you and we'll give you everything you want. You see, the problem I have with that, you all tell me, hey Patrice, hey James, is that he's essentially setting up a situation that if people did come and protest in Clay County, if somebody who was against the protest actually wanted to start something that wasn't a part of the protest just to watch him get out of line, then you have a situation where there's an incite in some type of violence or a riot, because he's already set the groundwork for that to take place. And if somebody who is against a protest has ill will towards the protest or the movement or the message or the narrative, then their whole goal would be to go out there and counter protest under the guise of the actual protesters who would be there peacefully. And I think that as a leader, and do he even have a messenger? Like, what do you call those PR people? Like people who write his messages? Like somebody then be like, probably wouldn't do that. Didn't anybody say something to him? But my point being is that that just wasn't the move. And I found it to be questionable. Andre says, I remember when he was in trouble in Clay County, he's just trying to sound tough to keep votes. He's another David Clark, who was sheriff in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. LaRonda says sabotage. Yeah, well, that's funny you mention it. And I'm going to tell you why. When you all get a chance, look up a guy who used to be a pastor, I don't know, by the name of Ken Atkins. And he was here. He's out of Brunswick, but certain parties and certain people with certain interests will gather him and have him speak for the local pastor communities, black pastor clergy, on issues as it related to the community. He wasn't necessarily interested in the black community or the clergy's message in and of itself. What he was trying to do was basically go against what people were having an issue with. He did that for quite some time. So he was one of those people that they brought in, made, like I said, an interest that was against give you an example, like right now he would come in and say, hey, people don't go out there and protest. We just want to move, this issue along. We're going to, get along, and we don't need that type of, energy and Clay. He's that guy who opposed what, the black community for the most part had an issue with and things like that. Well, lo and behold, unfortunately, because I don't wish this on anybody, he'd been doing this for some time. He'd even stood right next to Angela Corey on different protests. They would just bring him in as a mouthpiece and also for optics. Well, then he gets investigated for things of some sexual assault or some of that nature from like almost 20 years ago. Went to trial, found him guilty of 8 charges, and they've given him life in prison. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because as soon as Sheriff Daniels is no longer a sheriff and he is no longer useful to their agenda, they will send himself up the creek just like they were willing to do for Ken Atkins. It's just going to be that simple. They make the rules up as they go. They change them whenever they feel like it. And unfortunately, he is not of the hue can get away with that. And everybody's, supporting him now because right now he could be the puppet while the puppet masters are basically pulling the strings. I think it's very important that he understands, if he doesn't know yet, but he will soon learn, that when they no longer have a use for you, they will disregard you like trash. And then, unfortunately, you'll be subject to the same penalties as everybody else who doesn't have the badge or basically the status or in the actual group of people who are considered off limits. You would just be like everybody else. And that's going to be really unfortunate because Ken Atkins is 50 or 60 and he's serving life for something that was discovered over 20 years ago. And also, I think it's important to think about this, Sheriff Daniels. I'm pretty sure if your past discretions got caught up with you at this point, and it's really not a judgment, it's just a matter of if somebody wanted to really do some digging, they find it, and certain things are just not off limits. Ask Bill Cosby and Harvey Weinstein. So I suggest you might want to consider your threats and where you stand, and maybe even just let the other 6 people that are running, let somebody get that office. Trying to get out while you can. I'm interested to see what this report is going to show. I hate having to be like, no, I actually don't hate being like that. I think what you did was irresponsible. And I have a problem with a threat that you give to people. And I'm sure that you have young people or children of your own. You wouldn't feel like everybody else in the community about that type of threat, because it was a threat, make no mistake about it. And I think that it was very reckless. And I think it's going to come back to haunt you. I don't hope that it does. I hope that you can figure out a way to come back off of that, but I think it's going to come back to bite you. I don't know. And he says all the publicity, all the pain, all the glamour and glory for all that 5 minutes will give you. Honey, let me tell you something. For them 3 minutes of that rhetoric you just gave, they will give you a lifetime of pain. And I don't mean they, meaning the people. It's going to be the systems in place that produce and inflict state violence on everybody else. You'll be subject to it as well. You are not exempt from that. You're just not. I think you see that right now as you're under investigation. But I'm willing to bet this ain't your first time. Just ain't been caught. So he says, if we can't handle you, I'll exercise the power and authority as the sheriff, and I'll make special deputies of every lawful gun owner in this county, and I'll deputize them for this one purpose: to stand in the gap between lawlessness and civility. Okay, essentially what he is saying that he will do is in some way allow a citizen's arrest of lawful gun owners, no less, lawful gun owners in his community, okay, to, I guess, perform duties for the purpose of standing in the gap and enforcing, I guess, what they would do as deputies. And you know what the sad part about that is? His comment was so disrespectful and it was so low that he essentially is claiming that he will give these people the power that Ahmaud Arbery's killers believed they had when they stalked him and killed him in the street like a deer. This is essentially what he's saying. This is why this is so dangerous. This is the reason why I'm saying something, because that right there is unacceptable. I have kids, and even if I didn't, there's no way in the world as a human, as a person in that community, that I would ever be okay with somebody with that amount of leadership and power and authority abusing it. And I mean, who does he think he is? Trump Jr.? You're just making up idle stuff? You know, he can get away with that. I'm gonna have to yell, y'all. Can y'all hear me now?
Oh, this thing died.
Okay. Can you hear me? Hey, Tangy. I just want to make sure y'all can hear me. If you look at my bag, my beats in there. Do I still not have sound?
No, you do.
I'm good. Can they hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. I apologize, everybody. My batteries went bad on my wireless mic, as you can see. I got sound. Johnny Daniels says I'm back. Woo, thank you. I'm back. Thank you, Tam. Ernest, y'all got me? I appreciate you. Now, where I left off at so we can clean this up. I don't even know where I went back. Let me go back to, let's see. As soon as you said Trump Jr., the sound went out. Okay, so I think you got the part where I talked about him stating that one part about deputizing his communities of lawful gun owners for the purpose of standing the gap, how dangerous that is, and also that he essentially was given permission and claiming that he would deputize his community
to essentially do what was done to Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia. That's basically what he's saying that he is going to allow if he feels that the protests aren't peaceful. That's dangerous. So I hope y'all got that because I think that's important. Yeah, I called him Trump. Because I mean, what he said was, do you see this? Yeah, I'm going to put the link in there. Everything is dog whistle, threats, lies. I mean, come on, Sheriff Daniels. You need to get with somebody to write your speeches, and if whoever did it, and it wasn't you, they set you up. I'm gonna let you know they set you up, and they set you up because ain't nobody else doing this. They show like black getting away with it. I'm just saying, I wouldn't do it either way, but I think you might want to consider that. But nonetheless, you did say, is it a threat? Absolutely not. Sheriff Daniel, you know it was a threat. That was your whole intention. It was to intimidate people. It was to, prevent them in some type of way through, your idle threat, which I'm willing to bet you're not willing to go and deputize lawful gun owners. Like you're just gonna turn into the Wild Wild West in Clay County, huh? No, you're not. You're not gonna do that. That's not what you want to do. I think you need to really come back and figure out a different message. Just like people have been protesting in other counties and other states who are wanting to get out, want their freedom. Everybody has the right to protest, and never have you given a message about counter protesters and anything else. So why would you target specifically this group, the BLM, and everybody else? It is your job to uphold the constitutional rights of people, and that does include people using their First Amendment right. What you don't have the right to do is to incite violence and exercise lawlessness, not only in your personal indiscretions, but also on your job. And so by saying you deputize a community of lawful gun owners is concerning to me, and actually it should be concerning to people in that community, because what that can create is very much and very okay corral type of deal. And if you know your history, you know that's the reason why those laws were brought in to begin with, because we were property. So that lawlessness that went on back in the day was not for us. And that's exactly what was going on, eye for an eye, right in the middle of the streets. So I'm gonna need you to do better. And personally, I don't wish you any ill will in terms of the investigation that is in the hands of Melissa Nelson. I do hope that she does the right thing, seeing that she does not have a history of upholding the constitutional laws on law enforcement. I'd like to see that change, and unfortunately, Sheriff Daniels, you could definitely be the example set. I don't want to see you go to jail, because I think jail is harmful, and it's I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. But what you're threatening upon the community, what message you're inciting is dangerous, and I really don't think that I don't think that's a good look for you. I don't think it's very responsible as a leader. So that's that. Johnny Daniels, maybe someone should show him footage of the peaceful protesters on the Edmund Pettus Bridge during Bloody Sunday. I hate it. All right. Guess what? I'm pretty sure he knows about it. At this point, I think he's above what everybody else is experiencing, because he has the shield that he can hide behind. I think that a lot of people whose intentions are not to be public servants will think that way. I will say this: those doors swing. The prison door, the jail doors, incarceration doors, they swing both ways. So that definitely isn't a good look for him. I'm looking at my messages, so that's the reason why I'm having to keep looking down. Hopefully you can hear me. What does my sweatshirt say? My sweatshirt says, can you see it now? I'm sitting up. That's what it says. I am human, enough is enough. That's what my shirt says. I got it out of my mama's drawer. I was at her house. Let me get this shirt. Let's see. All right. That's all I got on that, y'all. Are you taking care of yourself? Are y'all taking a break from all this stuff? I haven't been watching it the last couple of days. I needed a break, and I enjoyed thoroughly the BET Awards because it was different, and I like the messaging behind it. I think it's a really good time for that. I will leave you with this. So there's a book written by Beth Ritchie, and it talks about how violence against women, Black women, and how state violence and the issues that we have to deal with is it intersects in male violence, community violence, and then state violence. And so she has this chapter in there where she talks about, as it relates to white feminism and then the feminism movement, how we won the mainstream but lost the movement. And I think that's where we are right now. We have a lot of people in the mainstream talking about it, donating, doing all type of things. What we don't want to do is lose the momentum. What we don't want to do is, fight, enter within our own, beliefs and what we want. This is a really good time to search out what it is that you feel lines up with your core being values and what you can do and stand for, and get on board with that. I don't really have the energy nor the time or the patience for anybody that wants to just drag people for the sake of doing it. It's counterproductive, and it's not going to advance anybody. So I think that find your tribe where it relates for you, and jump in, put your sleeves up, pull out the checkbook, and jump in. And that's all I got. That's all I got. I appreciate y'all tuning in. I'm gonna get off here in a couple minutes. I ain't got to do 7:30 with y'all. Let's keep it real. Sometimes people in power forget where they come from. People in power, people with money, people who overcome certain circumstances, they do. But the fact of the matter is, we just all gonna have to come leave here one day and meet our maker, and I don't know what that's gonna look like. I'm just trying to hook slide on into heaven. Trust me, I had to work hard at it too. All right, y'all, I'm gonna post these links in there. You check them out yourself, and make sure that you stay on top of what's going on with this story, and also make sure that when things aren't lined up, y'all speak about them. Call these people out. We pay them with our tax dollars. He may not have to answer me, but he has to answer me, because our money, our tax dollars, pays his salary, and the rest of his budget comes out of our tax dollars. And I demand better. I know he can do better, and if he can't, I wish that he gets out the office. Somebody else in there will do it better. And that's my thoughts on that. Peace out.